Charlotte Benson, an exceptionally successful female CEO, despite her company's continuous string of brilliant achievements, has always harbored an unnameable unease, a sense that something was amiss beneath the surface of glossy numbers and dazzling reports. Determined to uncover the truth, Charlotte made a bold decision. She would disguise herself as an ordinary janitor, silently immersing herself in her employees' daily world to witness firsthand their lives, emotions, and behaviors. What seemed like a simple test soon led her to a series of shocking discoveries, forcing Charlotte to confront the darker side of her own organization, where every value and ideal she once believed in faced its greatest challenge. Why did Charlotte's decision to go undercover lead to such unexpected climaxes and conflicts? And what hidden corners did her journey reveal, paving the way for a transformation in an institution she thought she knew inside and out? In the glass-roofed office on the top floor of Bright Vision's headquarters, the premier tech conglomerate of Silicon Valley, the sun's rays poured through expansive panes of glass, reflecting brilliant light onto the long row of desks where senior directors raised their glasses in celebration. The applause resonated like rolling waves, and congratulatory cheers echoed. "Congratulations, Charlotte. Another stellar quarter. Bright Vision has set a new record." The media had dubbed her the Queen of 21st Century Technology, and employees reveled in the festive atmosphere. Yet, amid all the glory, Charlotte Benson, an African-American woman and the first to reach such heights, stood quietly, her deep-set eyes fixed on the vast window. Below lay a bustling cityscape, traffic streaming endlessly, and a giant billboard announcing Bright Vision's latest product, dominating one corner of the boulevard. Everything appeared perfect, but in Charlotte's heart stirred an indescribable emptiness. She had journeyed a rugged path from a humble farming community in rural Georgia, overcoming countless prejudices and pressures to reach today's summit. She once believed that as long as her company kept growing, her products kept innovating, and profits kept breaking records, that was true success. But today's applause, the selfies with the board, and the hollow praise only sharpened her awareness of the gap between her and something essential she had held onto since the company's founding. Stepping out of the boardroom, Charlotte paused beside the window, placing her hand on the cold glass tabletop. Her phone vibrated. An email from Human Resources. Q. 2024 Employee Satisfaction Survey Report. Urgent. Charlotte opened the attached PDF and skimmed through the charts, which were glowing red. Employee satisfaction had plunged to its lowest point since she took the helm. Beneath the anonymous comments, recurring phrases jumped out. Hostile work environment. Not being heard. Favoritism in promotions. Feeling like just a number. Coldness from superiors. Charlotte froze. The words cut straight into her mind. For years, she had taken pride in the open culture, diversity and fairness she worked so hard to cultivate. And yet, beneath the surface of that glittering facade, Bright Vision was colder and more distant than ever. In that moment, with the applause fading behind the door, Charlotte realized that if she truly wanted to uncover the truth, she could no longer sit atop the tower, judging by numbers or flattery. It was time for her to step down, to see with her own eyes, listen with her own ears, and touch the darkest corners of Bright Vision. A crucial decision began to take shape, and from that point on, Charlotte's path as CEO would veer in an entirely new direction, not only for her company but also for her own values and ideals. Charlotte's unease remained palpable even after she closed the survey email, and it followed her into the expansive executive conference room where sunlight poured through thick glass panes, flooding the glossy oak table. Inside, Marcus Hayes and Jessica Evans were already waiting, each wearing an expression weighed down by the cold, hard numbers displayed on the large screen at the far end of the room. Marcus, a white American man in his early 50s who had been Charlotte's unwavering rock throughout the company's rapid expansion, nervously tapped his fingers on a stack of papers, his normally confident gaze now streaked with doubt. Beside him, Jessica Evans, an Asian American woman known for her sharp mind and careful speech, her eyes faintly shadowed from sleepless nights spent working with HR, kept flipping through her tablet, cross-checking the latest charts and figures. Charlotte took her seat at the head of the table, her voice calm but frosty. "We all know why we're here. I want candid feedback, no sugarcoating." Marcus spoke first, attempting to sound upbeat. "I think this is just the inevitable aftermath of hyper-growth, Charlotte. When a company expands too fast, internal friction is unavoidable. Like every year, we run a few team-building programs, tweak benefits here and there, and things smooth over." Jessica looked at Charlotte and stifled a sigh, then swiped her tablet screen and read slowly. "Employee satisfaction is down 17% compared to last year. In particular, feelings of being undervalued, favoritism in promotions, leadership disconnected from reality, all have spiked in engineering, operations, and even support. Some comments are harsh. 'I'm just a ghost walking the halls,' and 'this company cares only about metrics, forgetting who we are.'" Charlotte paused, staring intently at Jessica. "Are there specific names mentioned, or is this just general grumbling?" Jessica hesitated, her eyes darting to Marcus before returning to her screen. "There's mention of favoritism by several mid-level managers. Linda Parker in operations comes up the most. Some say Linda's department only picks insiders, shutting out seasoned candidates. There are also complaints about Brian Mitchell's IT team. People who propose new ideas get sidelined unless they're in the boss's circle." Marcus cut in, protective in tone. "Jessica, we have to understand that these comments could be personal gripes. Anyone dropped from a project can get upset. We shouldn't let a few negative voices skew our overall assessment." But Charlotte remained unmoved by those excuses. Her gaze swept across their faces like a blade. "Marcus, that kind of dismissal is exactly what's dangerous. If we keep rationalizing and saying it's the same everywhere, eventually everything gets buried under a veneer of success. I refuse to let Bright Vision become a company that's monumentally successful by the numbers but a colossal failure in human terms." Jessica ventured a suggestion, choosing her words carefully. "Perhaps we could increase allowances, offer more flexible work-from-home options, maybe host more meet-and-greets to rebuild team cohesion. In reality, most large companies handle things this way, and over time they recover." Charlotte shook her head slightly, her tone resolute. "We're only addressing the tip of the iceberg. I need something real, something at the root. How can we know what's truly happening if we only sit here reading spreadsheets?" The air in the room grew thick, and every movement seemed to slow. A heavy silence stretched on for a full minute. Suddenly, Charlotte closed her eyes for a moment, and in her mind rang the words of that old mentor back in Georgia. "If you want to understand an organization, live as the lowest level in it. Observe how they look at you, listen to their conversations, and you will know what the organization really is." She opened her eyes and looked directly at her colleagues. "I've made a decision. I will find the truth myself. I will live and work as the lowest-ranked person at Bright Vision, a janitor, a completely anonymous employee. I want to see with my own eyes, hear with my own ears, and feel with my own hands." Marcus blinked in shock, then laughed, thinking Charlotte was joking. Jessica's eyes went wide, disbelief clear on her face. "You mean, disguise yourself as a cleaning staff member, You, personally?" Charlotte offered a cold smile, but her eyes blazed with steely resolve. "Exactly. I will be Charlie Baker, a new member of the cleaning crew. Only then will I uncover Bright Vision's true roots." No one spoke another word. Silence and unease rippled through the closed room. In a hidden corner, the looming silhouettes of Linda and the other mid-level managers, the very villains implied by those survey results, felt more real than ever. And Charlotte knew that her journey into the dark side of corporate power was only just beginning. Charlotte's resolve was like a hidden undercurrent, spreading quickly and unsettling all the familiar norms of this ivory tower of power. Before Marcus could fully recover from his shock and Jessica could find words to dissuade her, Charlotte coldly laid out each concrete step. The executive conference table, once the epicenter of multi-million-dollar deals, now became her disguise strategy room, strewn with sticky notes, files, and forged resumes. Though Marcus did not fully support the plan, he found himself swept up in Charlotte's relentless momentum. He was tasked with discreetly contacting their partner cleaning company and handling the paperwork to hire a temporary janitor. Meanwhile, Jessica, meticulous with every detail, was responsible for constructing a flawless backstory for Charlie Baker. Born in 1979 in Atlanta, previously employed at a lumber mill, divorced, moved to California after a family crisis, and recently applying to Bright Vision's cleaning crew in hopes of turning her life around. Every detail, address, social security number, medical records, was fabricated down to the last comma. Charlotte practiced her posture and gait with utmost seriousness. She deliberately shortened her stride, hunched her shoulders, moved slowly, and abandoned the confident bearing of a CEO accustomed to commanding armies. Jessica coached her to speak with a faint southern drawl, tinged with weariness and humility. One evening, the three of them stood before the large mirror as Jessica offered constant feedback. "Shoulders a bit lower, Charlie. When you're talking, don't look people directly in the eye. They'll think you're socially awkward." Marcus produced his tarnished silver wedding band from his pocket. "Wear this, so people believe Charlie recently went through a divorce. Those small details will help you blend into the cleaning crew." Finally, Charlotte decided to sacrifice her long, luxurious black hair, which had become a symbol of her style. She went to a small late-night salon, asked the stylist to chop it off and dye it a light brown, cut in blunt bangs and curl the ends, just as many middle-aged Southern women often do. When she looked in the mirror afterward, Charlotte no longer recognized the powerful Bright Vision CEO. Instead, she saw a sun-kissed woman whose eyes held a quiet sadness, carrying the weight of a stormy, everyday life on her shoulders. On the last night before showtime, Charlotte's apartment was bathed in the warm glow of her bedside lamp. Daniel Benson, her tall husband with resolute yet gentle eyes, sat beside her. He studied her silently as she changed into the worn green janitor's uniform and pinned Charlie Baker on the pocket. Charlotte offered a small, nervous smile. "I've prepared everything. No one will recognize me." Daniel moved closer and gently wrapped his arm around her shoulders. His warmth anchored her in the vast, lonely sea Charlotte felt inside. "You're crazy, Charlotte. But if anyone in this world has the guts to live someone else's life just to protect their own convictions, it's definitely you." Charlotte lifted her head, her eyes no longer trembling but shining with conviction, not just in herself but in the inherent worth of every ordinary person in this company. "I'm doing this not only for Bright Vision, but for myself, for all the people who have been forgotten." Outside the window, the city's lights still glittered. Inside Charlotte, that night marked a profound transformation, where a CEO was willing to relinquish every privilege and start over from scratch to find the true light for her company. The anxiety lingered in Charlotte's chest as she closed the survey email, following her into the expansive executive meeting room where sunlight streamed through thick glass panes, flooding the polished oak table. Inside, Marcus Hayes and Jessica Evans waited, each wearing expressions weighed down by the stark numbers displayed on the large screen at the far end of the room. Marcus, a white American man in his 50s who had been Charlotte's unshakable pillar throughout the years of the company's expansion, shifted uncomfortably, tapping his fingers on a stack of papers. His usually confident gaze now flickered with doubt. Beside him, Jessica Evans, an Asian American woman known for her sharp intellect and painstaking attention to detail, her eyes faintly shadowed from nights spent poring over HR reports, scrolled through her tablet, double-checking the latest charts. Charlotte slipped into the seat at the head of the table, her voice calm but cutting. "We all know why we're here. I want honest feedback, no sugarcoating." Marcus leaned forward first, striving to sound upbeat. "I think this is just the inevitable fallout from our rapid growth, Charlotte. When a company expands too fast, internal conflict is unavoidable. Like any other year, we can run a few team-building events, tweak benefits here and there, and things will smooth over." Jessica glanced at Charlotte, stifled a sigh, then swiped her tablet screen and read deliberately, "Employee satisfaction is down 17% compared to last year. Specifically, feelings of being undervalued, favoritism in promotions, and leadership disconnected from reality have spiked in engineering, operations, and even support. Some of the comments are harsh. I'm just a ghost roaming the halls, and this company only cares about metrics, forgetting who we are." Charlotte paused, her gaze locking onto Jessica. "Are their names mentioned, or is this just general grumbling?" Jessica hesitated, her eyes flicking to Marcus before returning to her screen. "There's mention of favoritism from certain mid-level managers. Linda Parker in operations comes up the most. Some say Linda's department only hires insiders, shutting out long-time employees. There are also complaints about Brian Mitchell's IT team. If you propose a new idea and you're not in the boss's inner circle, you're sidelined." Marcus interjected, his tone protective. "Jessica, we have to remember that these might just be personal grievances. Anyone dropped from a project would be upset. We shouldn't let a few negative voices skew our overall perspective." But Charlotte's expression didn't waver. Her eyes swept over them like a blade. "Marcus, that kind of dismissal is exactly what's dangerous. If we keep rationalizing and saying it's the same everywhere, we'll end up burying everything under a facade of success. I refuse to let Bright Vision become the kind of company that's phenomenally successful on paper, but a colossal failure when it comes to humanity." Jessica ventured hesitantly. "Maybe we can increase stipends, offer more work-from-home flexibility, host additional gatherings to rebuild team cohesion. In reality, many large companies handle issues this way, and over time, things settle down." Charlotte shook her head, her tone resolute. "We're only addressing the tip of the iceberg. I need something real, something at the root. How can we understand what's really happening if we just sit here and read spreadsheets?" The air in the room grew heavy, and every movement seemed to slow. A tense silence stretched for a full minute. Suddenly, Charlotte closed her eyes briefly, recalling the words of her old mentor back in Georgia. "If you want to understand an organization, live as the lowest rank in it. See how people treat you, listen to what they say, and you'll know the truth of the organization." Opening her eyes, she looked both of them in the face. "I've made a decision. I'm going to find out the truth myself. I will live and work as the lowest-ranked person at Bright Vision, a janitor, entirely anonymous. I want to see with my own eyes, hear with my own ears, and feel with my own hands." Marcus blinked in shock, then laughed as if he thought she was joking. Jessica's eyes went wide in disbelief. "You mean disguise yourself as a custodial worker? You, personally?" Charlotte offered a faint, almost eerie smile, her eyes aflame with determination. "Exactly. I will be Charlie Baker, a new member of the cleaning crew. Only then can I get to the real root of Bright Vision." No one spoke another word. Silence and apprehension rippled through the room. In a hidden corner, the specters of Linda and the other mid-level managers, implied villains from those survey comments, loomed larger than ever. And Charlotte knew her journey into the dark side of corporate power was only just beginning. When the long night of preparation finally passed, Charlotte stepped out the door wearing the faded green uniform, a baseball cap shading the intelligent brow that had once graced every major business magazine. Her heart pounded unusually fast, not from fear of exposure, but from the strange loneliness of someone who had suddenly lost every privilege she once held. She didn't enter through the main entrance, where receptionists usually greeted employees with a polite nod, and polished glass walls each morning reflected the image of the powerful CEO. Instead, she turned toward the service entrance beside the parking lot, a path reserved for those invisible departments like maintenance, cleaning, and distribution. At the guard's desk, Tim Johnson, a young man who always greeted the executives with a cheery smile, barely glanced at Charlotte as she approached. "Where's your badge?" he asked, sounding half asleep. Charlotte's hand trembled slightly as she presented the Charlie Baker ID card that Jessica had painstakingly prepared. Tim took it, glanced at it quickly, then shook his head and gestured. "Basement, left hall, the janitorial office. Try not to wander up to the executive floors." The basement corridor was devoid of natural light, lit only by long rows of fluorescent bulbs. The chill from the air conditioning mingled with the lingering scent of cleaning chemicals. Each footstep echoed in solitude, and every corner felt coldly unfamiliar. For the first time, Charlotte felt anything but owner of this building. The janitorial team's small office was cramped. Old metal lockers lined one corner, the desktop coated in dust, and a bulletin board pinned with duty rosters and warning notices. Doris Wilson, the head of the cleaning crew, a Mexican-American woman in her 50s whose salt and pepper hair was hastily pinned up, looked up at Charlotte with eyes that had grown accustomed to seeing one newcomer after another. Her hoarse voice held no hint of welcome. "You must be the new Charlie, right? Hope you last longer than the last one. Nobody here stays more than 3 months. We do the work, and the higher-ups don't even acknowledge we exist. Pays crap. You're fetching scrub buckets all day, and if anything goes wrong, tough luck, you won't hear a thank you, or even a look from the big bosses." Charlotte swallowed hard, nodded, and tried to mask her shock. Doris shoved a stack of documents into her hand: chemical handling instructions, safety procedures, and a floor plan. "Listen, Charlie, you gotta memorize the cleaning schedule for every floor, every section. Don't talk much, don't ask weird questions, and under no circumstances get involved in the higher-ups business. If you want to keep your head down, just finish your work and go home." Doris led Charlotte out of the office, down the long hallway of storage closets. "Here's the supply cart. There's your mop bucket, and over there are the window cleaning chemicals. Be extra careful near the executive floors. Drop something, make noise, and you'll be out the door faster than you can blink." All morning, Charlotte passed through spaces that had once been her kingdom. The grand lobby, the executive hallway where powerful meetings had been held under her command. But in that green uniform pushing a rickety cart, nobody looked up. The technician sidestepped her without a glance. The management team chattered loudly as if she didn't exist, and the security guard even pointed her toward the right hallway as though she were a complete outsider. At one point, she hesitated in front of a large conference room's doorway to empty the trash can, hearing muffled laughter and conversation inside. Another new cleaning person? Bet she won't last more than a week. A female manager chuckled. Here, everyone wants to be at the top. Who'd bother sweeping floors? Their words and glances passed straight through her. On this morning, for the first time in her life, Charlotte Benson truly felt forgotten, non-existent in the house she once thought she knew inside and out. When lunchtime came and everyone else streamed out to eat, Charlotte sat alone in a cramped storage room, the hum of the coffee machine and the clip-clop of heels echoing overhead. No more applause, no more admiring glances, just her and the reality that Charlie Baker, in some strange way, held up a mirror to the essence of power. When there's no title, no status, who are you in the eyes of others? From day one, Charlotte had understood that this invisibility wasn't just the janitor's plight. It was the silent, corrosive disease eating away at Bright Vision's heart. And this was only the beginning of the darkness she was about to confront. An invisible weight clung to Charlotte as she pushed the cart across the gleaming marble lobby. She carefully maneuvered along the main hallway, the same corridor that every Monday morning served as Bright Vision's leadership showcase. Familiar faces in suits flashed past her, their gazes glued to their phones, without a single person noticing the cleaning lady bent over her work. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. From the far end of the hallway, the click-clack of high-heeled steps on the hard stone floor rang out. Strong, steady, like a drumbeat announcing a cold performance. Linda Parker appeared, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, lips pressed into a firm line, gaze as sharp as a blade. Charlotte recognized her immediately. Bright Vision's chief operating officer, once considered an ally and a role model for the next generation of female leaders. Linda strode forward, one hand clutching a tablet, the other holding a steaming latte, not paying the slightest attention to Charlotte, who was bent over scrubbing a stain near the elevator. But just then, Charlotte fumbled and dropped her mop, the loud clang echoing through the normally quiet space. Linda came to an immediate halt, her pale blue eyes sweeping over Charlie like they were examining an irritating obstacle. She lowered her voice, ice in every syllable. Do you even know how to clean? Nobody here has time to redo whatever you mess up. If you can't handle it, I'll find someone else. Charlotte looked up, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. In Linda's gaze, there was no recognition. She saw only a clumsy new janitor, an unremarkable person with no name, no face, no worth. Charlotte, on the other hand, saw everything she had never dared to admit. That cold indifference, that uncompromising command in Linda's tone, that arrogance fueled by unchecked power, qualities Charlotte herself, as CEO, had once entrusted to Linda. Linda shook her head in disgust, showing off her contempt without even trying to hide it. Please don't create any more messes. I have far more important things to deal with. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking all the way down the hallway. A young sales associate passing by witnessed the scene, shrugged with a mocking grin, and stepped into the elevator, as if such conduct were perfectly normal at Bright Vision. Charlotte bent down to pick up the mop, her hands trembling momentarily. For years, she had believed Linda to be an inspiring leader, a powerful woman who spoke passionately about fairness and respecting every individual. And yet, with one small encounter, Linda's true face was revealed. Apathetic, harsh, dismissive of anyone deemed beneath her. That shock was not just a personal disappointment. It was a seismic shift in Charlotte's understanding of how power, when left unchecked, can destroy human dignity and trust. It was the first time she realized that behind slogans like empowerment and honoring people, a toxic culture had quietly taken root deep within the executive ranks. All morning long, Linda's presence haunted Charlotte. As she mopped the floors, Linda's icy words echoed in her mind, and she wondered, how many people here have swallowed their pride, been judged like that janitor and never dared to speak up? And she recognized that her mission was no longer merely about checking the company culture. It was about pulling back the curtain on the perfect faces and polished names to expose every dark corner that she, as CEO, had once ignorantly overlooked. The cold voice of Linda still echoed in Charlotte's mind as she continued her monotonous rounds of cleaning, wiping glass doors, emptying trash bins, and arranging chairs in the cafeteria. It was here, in the noisy midday bustle, that truths came to light. Truths Charlotte, as CEO, had never heard before. At lunchtime, the Bright Vision cafeteria was always packed. A cacophony of sounds, spoons clinking against trays, the coffee machine humming, conversations punctuated by bursts of laughter. Charlotte hunched over, clearing the last table in the row, and quietly listened to a group of mid-level managers seated at the table against the wall, the prime spot reserved for important people who wanted to eat lunch while discussing business without worrying about eavesdroppers. They paid no attention to the cleaning lady busy cleaning right beside them, treating her as if she were part of the furniture. "Hey, Mark, have you approved the list of candidates for Project Vision X yet?" Linda's voice rang out clearly, sharp as always, but this time with a rare hint of enthusiasm. Mark, the head of marketing, with his jet-black hair and that confident smile of someone who knows exactly how much power he holds, squinted at his tablet and replied leisurely, "Just Ivy League kids, Linda. Why bother with those outdated folks here? The young ones are more marketable, fit our brand image better, and appeal to younger customers. What can those old gray-haired guys do besides telling war stories?" Linda laughed loudly on purpose, ensuring everyone around the table heard her. "Yeah, but they don't have the skills we need right now. Image has to come first. I'm tired of defending those old-timers. They resist change, and their ideas are always stuck in the past. No wonder our customers get annoyed." A younger manager seated nearby, her blonde hair tied back, interjected with a tone trying to sound knowledgeable. "And what about that Raj Patel in engineering? I don't get why they're still keeping him. He talks to clients with that weird accent. Makes everyone uncomfortable. Plus, his dressing style is ridiculously outdated. You can tell at a glance he doesn't fit our company's youthful vibe. Sending him to meet partners will just make us look bad." Mark curled his lips into a mocking smile. "You'll figure it out once you've been here a while. If you don't fit the culture, you get pushed out. Those old guys, like Raj, they'll be retiring early soon enough." Linda tapped her fingernails on the table, her tone completely nonchalant. "You know, we've got an opportunity for a staff reshuffle soon. We need to get rid of some dead weight while we can. Too many people think that seniority equals respect. I don't like that kind of quiet devotion. It doesn't help our brand. Now, customers want innovation. They want to see a dynamic, youthful team. If we keep those old-timers around, we'll end up embarrassing leadership sooner or later." Charlotte felt each word like a blade cutting into her heart. Her hands trembled as she piled up plates and bowls, not from exhaustion, but from anger and disappointment. She thought of Raj Patel, the humble Indian-American engineer who quietly fixed software bugs, someone who had been with Bright Vision since its early days and never once complained. Now, because of his accent, his simple wardrobe, and his salt and pepper hair, Raj was becoming a casualty of the unspoken criteria, fitting the image, matching the brand. Across the table, Linda continued, "This time, I'm also planning to cut some of the long-serving staff in operations. Take Sarah, for example. She's competent, but she doesn't look the part. She has no sense of style, and she can't talk with that Ivy League flair like those kids. Put her in a management role, and who's impressed? I prefer hiring attractive young people with a snazzy way of speaking. Anywhere we take them, they'll make an impression. As for skill, we can train them later." Mark chimed in, not bothering to hide his contempt. "Always talking about competence, but really you judge by facade. Clients don't care about old employees, they just want to meet the face of the brand." A female staff member sitting quietly up to that point spoke up, her voice trembling. "But Raj saved the entire project last year. Without him, engineering would have collapsed. If we only judge by appearance, is that fair to people like him?" Linda shot the woman a cold glare. "Fairness won't keep this company afloat. If you can't adapt, you'll find yourself looking for another job. Otherwise, you'll get pushed out anyway." Those words were like a hammer sealing off any remaining hope. The atmosphere around the table suddenly grew heavy and icy. Charlotte felt as if she couldn't breathe, every cell in her body revolting against the naked dishonesty disguised as innovation culture and brand image. When the group of managers rose and left the table, Linda brushed past Charlotte without a second thought. No apology, no glance, only a scowl as if there were a smudge on her crisp white blouse. Linda, Mark, and the others exited the cafeteria, leaving behind a space that felt colder and emptier, not because people had left, but because their presence had brought with it simmering prejudices and injustices, and the cruel laughter born from the suffering of those deemed insignificant. Charlotte stood there silently, feeling at once like an outsider and a would-be revolutionary. She realized that this toxic culture did not spring from a few bad apples, but was nurtured by habits, prejudices, and the fear of genuine change. When appearance, credentials, ethnicity, and age become the sole yardsticks, then everyone who works quietly and devotedly, like Raj and Sarah, will forever remain on the fringes. That day, when her shift ended, Charlotte took home not only the smell of disinfectant and the grime on her hands, but also a heavy burden of sorrow. She understood that if change did not start with these small moments, these offhand remarks that seemed inconsequential, then, sooner or later, Bright Vision would lose its soul, the soul of those quiet individuals whose unwavering dedication truly sustained the company. Stepping out of the cafeteria, weighed down by the toxic chatter she'd just heard, Charlotte realized that Bright Vision's dark side went far beyond the brand image nonsense Linda and Mark had casually exposed. She faced that truth more clearly as soon as she returned to the tech floor, the very place she'd once proudly called the creative hub of the entire company as CEO. But in her role as Charlie, the ordinary janitor, Charlotte saw this space for what it truly was, a realm of shadows where the line between glory and oblivion had never felt so cold. Her feet had barely crossed the threshold of the main server room when she heard the mocking giggles of a cluster of young employees gathered around the coffee machine. Above the hushed buzz came the name Donna, spoken with derision. "Watch out! Donna's gonna break the coffee machine again." A blonde-haired woman shrugged and replied, "Who was it, last time, that fried the circuit board?" A brown-haired young man joined in, nodding toward the far corner of the room. probably our tech grandma again. I don't get why our department even keeps a prehistoric dinosaur like that around." Charlotte glanced back and saw Donna Matthews, an experienced engineer in her 50s, her gray hair loose around her shoulders, her reading glasses perched low on her nose, quietly packing up her paperwork at a desk in the corner. Donna's face paled. Her hand trembled for a moment, but she merely pressed her lips together without a word, then slipped away from the group as though her shoulders bore 100 pounds. Charlotte also noticed the furtive, embarrassed glances from a few others in the room, but not a single person stepped up to defend her. Those harmless jokes, wrapped in youthful laughter, were laced with the poison of ageism. In a place once extolling generational diversity, Donna, someone who had been with Bright Vision since its founding days, had become a target of ridicule simply because she was no longer young, no longer on trend, and no longer fit the chic style of the newer managers. Charlotte quietly turned toward the maintenance area, where her task was to inspect and clean various electronic devices. In a small, dimly lit side room, she spotted Raj Patel, an older Indian-American engineer, seated at an aging computer. His silver-specked hair caught the weak overhead light as he focused on a technical drawing on his monitor. Stacks of thick manuals and documents towered around him. Outside the windowed partition, Charlotte overheard two young managers, Brian Mitchell and Kyle Turner, speaking in low tones. "I want this new project to be staffed entirely with young talent. Send Raj over to help with storage. He doesn't fit our client image anymore." And listening to his accent up front, people said it's hard on the ears. Kyle nodded, coldly adding, "Right. Plus, he's so old school, he won't embrace the new apps. Keep him on the team and we'll all seem outdated in front of the partners." Charlotte felt each furrowed brow and icy remark strike Raj like an invisible blow. In these young managers' eyes, all of Raj's decades of experience and expertise had become an obstacle to sprucing up the roster. He himself seemed resigned to being sidelined. His shoulders slumped even further, his gaze lowered when he heard his name. No protest escaped his lips, only the quiet sadness of someone who knew he was no longer valued. All afternoon, Charlotte moved through the engineering rooms, maintenance bays, and the hallways on the third floor. Spaces filled with long-term employees who had once been the very foundation of Bright Vision. And she felt a pang of bitterness. The more years of experience someone had, the more easily they were pushed out. Those who had once been the company's right-hand experts were now mere silent shadows, isolated by cutting remarks, judging looks, and unspoken decisions that excluded them from new projects and creative teams. What hurt Charlotte most was how coldly the management system operated. No one directly insulted older employees or people of different backgrounds, but every whispered comment and every covert decision felt like a series of needles, stabbing at the dignity and sense of belonging of people like Donna and Raj. In the youthful, dynamic culture that Bright Vision proudly promoted, anyone who didn't fit the brand image became expendable, no matter how devotedly they worked or how much they had contributed. The further she settled into her role as Charlie, the more Charlotte felt the biting chill of isolation and contempt, being treated like an outsider in the very organization she once believed was a close-knit family. She saw in Donna, Raj, and many other long-tenured employees a sense of defeat and quiet endurance, perhaps because they understood that speaking up now would only make them stand out even more, leading to deeper isolation. At day's end, while cleaning the staff break room, Charlotte spotted Donna quietly picking up the half-eaten remains of a sandwich, her gaze fixed on the window where the last glow of sunset faded over Bright Vision's gleaming glass towers. In another corner, Raj shut down his computer, locked the door to the tech lab, and walked out carrying his briefcase. an almost spectral figure. Those images of Donna and Raj haunted Charlotte long after she left the building, leaving behind a world of forgotten people who had once built this company but were now discarded without a second thought. It was in that moment that Charlotte realized every reform, every declaration of diversity and inclusion would be nothing more than lip service, unless, in every room and every team, those invisible biases were confronted head-on. And if she did nothing, countless more Donnas, Rajs, and anyone else deemed not a good fit would continue to be cast aside, silenced, shamed, and in pain, with nobody to speak up for them. The icy words of Linda still echoed in Charlotte's mind as she continued her monotonous janitorial duties, cleaning glass doors, emptying trash bins, and arranging chairs in the cafeteria. It was here, amidst the noisy lunch-hour crowd, that truths came to light. Truths Charlotte had never heard in her CEO office. That afternoon, when she was cleaning the IT area, Charlotte immediately noticed the completely different atmosphere. Gone was the indifference, competition, and haughty, look-down-your-nose attitude she'd seen on the executive floors or in marketing. Instead, there was lively conversation, genuine laughter, and a spirit of open collaboration spreading through the small teams. At the center of that vibrancy was Henry Walker, a black IT engineer in his 30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with a hearty smile and eyes that shone with optimism and kindness. Henry wasn't a manager or a face of the company, but everyone knew him. As Charlotte wiped down a keyboard, she noticed Henry moving from desk to desk, helping colleagues, showing an intern how to reset a server, teaching a new coworker how to secure her account, and bending down to pick up a pen that had fallen from Charlotte's cart. A small gesture, but the first friendly attention she'd received in days. "You must be the new Charlie, right? I'm Henry. Nice to meet you." Henry offered his hand, his smile so genuine that Charlotte almost forgot she was playing a role. "Thank you. I'm still new and kinda lost here. Any guidance would really help," she replied. "Nah, no problem at all." "Here, we're all equals. You know, Charlie." Henry paused, his eyes bright, his voice warm. "Whether you're emptying the trash or writing AI code, everyone is important. No one person keeps the system running smoothly without someone else cleaning, dusting, and taking out the garbage. I like to think that's how Bright Vision should be, but not everyone sees it that way." Charlotte was momentarily speechless. In that moment, she saw Henry as completely different from the cold Linda, arrogant Mark, or the calculating young managers outside. He talked with everyone by name, from the security guard and cleaning staff to temporary workers. Sometimes, in the middle of a shift, Henry would sneak a sandwich from the break room to someone working the night shift, or voluntarily help another department fix a piece of equipment without waiting to be thanked. As she wiped a desk near the printer, Charlotte overheard Henry encouraging an anxious Asian intern. "Don't let anyone make you feel unworthy just because you don't know everything yet. Everyone here started from zero, right, Charlie?" Charlotte could only nod, both moved and ashamed that in the past she had overlooked people like Henry. A small spark of hope flickered in her heart. If there were many more Henrys like him, maybe Bright Vision still had a chance to reclaim its true values. Later that afternoon, when the building had quieted down, Charlotte was assigned to clean the accounting office on the 5th floor. There, she witnessed another story. Not as loud as the IT area, but heartbreakingly silent. Angela Brown, a black accountant nearing 40, sat at her desk, her eyes darkened by exhaustion yet radiating determination. Angela focused on her work, correcting line items in financial reports and reviewing hundreds of spreadsheet entries that everyone else dreaded touching. On her desk was a framed photo of her son, around 8 years old, placed at the corner as a reminder of her motivation. As the day wound down and everyone else left, Angela continued meticulously checking every expense, correcting mistakes for her coworkers. When her phone rang, she spoke gently to her child. "Mom will be home late tonight. Heat up your dinner yourself. I have to finish this report for the whole department. I promise I'll take you to the park tomorrow." Charlotte watched silently, her heart aching. From whispered conversations, she learned that Angela had been passed over for promotion 3 times because of lack of connections, not attending team-building events, and no relationship with upper management. Meanwhile, colleagues who went drinking or socializing with managers were given new opportunities, even if their contributions were nothing remarkable. That evening, as she emptied the wastebaskets in a conference room, Charlotte overheard 2 young finance employees whispering, "Angela Brown is still here working late again? She's used to it. Doesn't matter. She doesn't go to the boss's parties, so she'll never get promoted." Hearing those words made Charlotte's throat tighten. She saw Angela's quiet perseverance and sacrifices, efforts unadorned and uncelebrated. And yet Angela was cast aside and judged simply because she didn't fit the image culture of management. In that moment, Charlotte realized, even though Bright Vision's system was poisoned by people like Linda, Mark, and Brian, somewhere within it, people like Henry and Angela were quietly keeping a spark of light alive. Those were the people who truly offered hope for real renewal. And as the invisible Charlie, Charlotte knew she must do something to help that light spread, strong enough to awaken the entire organization, which was growing colder by the day. The faint hope kindled by people like Henry and Angela felt like a pale ray of sunshine in an otherwise pitch-dark room for Charlotte. Because soon after, she witnessed those sparks of goodwill being ruthlessly snuffed out by the cold machinery of power and indifference dominating Bright Vision. In those moments, the portrait of a fractured organization emerged sharply, where the true villains were no longer just a few individuals, but an entire toxic system with roots that ran deep. That afternoon, Charlotte was assigned to clean the server room on the 6th floor, the domain of the IT department. She had barely stepped inside when she sensed the tension crackling like a taut bowstring. Brian Mitchell, young IT manager, sleek blonde hair combed back, trendy gray suit, stood at the center with his arms crossed, his voice high and authoritative. Henry Walker, who usually remained calm, now looked visibly anxious. In a firm, resolute tone, he said, "Brian, the new update has a lot of security vulnerabilities. If we push that code without thorough checks, our customers will run into serious issues." Brian waved a dismissive hand and smiled thinly. "The board cares only about timelines, Henry. Who has time to pore over every line of code? Don't blow this out of proportion. If it's a minor bug, we'll patch it later. Right now, just get the project moving." "But I believe security must come first." "Remember your place," Brian interrupted. "Here, I make the decisions. If you want to keep your head down, stop playing hero." The room fell silent. Henry froze, his face darkening, his fists clenched as though trying to choke back anger and helplessness. His colleagues around him, one after another, lowered their heads and returned to their work. Nobody dared speak up in his defense. Charlotte saw the hurt flicker across Henry's face as his faith in basic decency was trampled by a single, imperial brow furrow of power. Leaving the IT room, Charlotte moved on to the finance floor, where Angela Brown was still diligently reviewing reports. Tonight, the accounting office stayed lit longer than usual, gearing up for the year's biggest audit. But even staying past midnight, Angela remained merely a shadow at the fringes. When Angela asked to skip an internal meeting so she could pick her son up from summer camp, her manager, Laura Peterson, whose bright red hair and booming laugh filled the room, coldly addressed the entire department. "Angela, your team spirit is an issue. How many times must I remind you? If you don't attend team-building events and don't blend in with the group, don't expect any promotion opportunities. At Bright Vision, no one wants to work with someone detached. Nobody cares about a silent superhero." Angela could only bite her lip and sit there in silence, enduring the rebuke. Charlotte watched that painful scene. No one mentioned that Angela was the one who'd caught a huge error in last year's report, nor did anyone ask what support she needed to work more effectively beyond those meaningless office parties. At Bright Vision, quiet dedication was labeled not being a team player, and the lack of team spirit tag became a ticket to push good people aside rather than to help them advance. On her final cleaning round that evening, Charlotte stopped by the maintenance office. In a dark corner, she found Terrence Carter, a muscular African-American man whose once confident stance was now collapsed in sorrow, sitting hunched against the wall, head buried in his arms, tears falling onto his oil-stained uniform. Gently, Charlotte approached, about to offer comfort. Terrence waved her off, trying to sound strong. "It's nothing, just a bit tired, Charlie." But he could not hold back. He broke down in sobs among the heavy machinery. "I'm about to lose my house. My wife's been hospitalized long-term, and my salary barely covers the bills. I went to HR for help, and they just handed me a few financial pamphlets, telling me to hang in there or try getting a bank loan. After more than 10 years of loyalty, this is all I get." Charlotte fell silent, rage and helplessness surging in her chest. A multi-billion-dollar company, once boasting of great benefits and a family culture, now let someone like Terrence struggle so badly that he cried in the night over nothing more than cold, impersonal advice sheets. She realized that caring, quiet, dedicated people like Henry, Angela, and Terrence were being suffocated by a system that valued only appearances and correct team culture metrics. In this environment, anyone who differed, anyone who refused to bow down to management's unspoken demands, anyone who didn't know how to flatter, became marginalized, forever unseen for their true worth. That night, as she left Bright Vision in her janitor's uniform, Charlotte's anger burned hotter than ever. She had once trusted reports and internal culture metrics, neglecting the silent sighs and bitter tears of those dedicated individuals pushed aside simply because they didn't fit in. And she understood. Real change would require exposing the core of the problem, daring to confront and strip away the false, glittering facade that was obscuring the humanity of Bright Vision. Midnight. The city's neon lights blazed outside, only amplifying Charlotte's loneliness in her small, modest apartment near Bright Vision. Her calloused hands still carried the scent of cleaning chemicals after a day of scrubbing, but physical exhaustion wasn't what kept her awake. It was the gnawing guilt consuming every corner of her soul. Before her lay a mountain of notes, ripped hastily from her notebook and even from scraps of toilet paper in the women's restroom. Each sheet crowded with words she'd jotted down in secret as she worked. Henry, overlooked for speaking honestly. Angela, skilled but unrecognized. Terrence, dedicated but desperate, with no one to help. Donna, Raj, is aging a crime? Not brand image, material means exile. Linda, Brian, management cares only about metrics, short-term results, worker feelings and worth. No value assigned. Each scrap of paper was a cold slice of reality. Faces, muffled sobs, shattered dreams. Under Charlotte's pen, they became evidence of a heartbreaking truth. Bright Vision, a company she once believed was the very model of humane, progressive culture, was actually a place where team image conformity, favoritism, superficial achievements, and invisible biases snuffed out talent and kindness faster than any competitor out there. She flipped through the notes, and the more she read, the more it felt like she was tumbling into a bottomless pit. Since founding the company, Charlotte had set a mission. Bright Vision must be a place where everyone is respected, allowed to develop according to their true abilities, where every individual feels they belong, regardless of age, race, background, or position. Yet now, all she saw were lives being strangled, good people retreating into silence, and diverse voices fading away under a forest of toxic team culture norms. Inside Charlotte, a fierce internal struggle raged, each probing question stabbing mercilessly. Whose fault is this? Is it Linda's, someone Charlotte once trusted implicitly, now the very symbol of cold power, ready to discard anyone who doesn't match the brand? Is it Brian's, the ambitious new manager who cares only about timelines and productivity, ignoring urgent warnings from his core team? Or is the greatest fault actually hers, Charlotte Benson, the CEO, once proud of her spotless reports, who allowed the system to run without truly looking into the lives or feelings of those under her? She sat motionless before the window, her fists clenched tight. The city lights outside painted distorted shadows on the walls, much like Charlotte's own heart right that moment, twisted between her ideals and the harsh truth that had just been laid bare. The soft click of the front door punctured the silence. Daniel, her husband, who had always supported her quietly, stepped in and sat beside her without a word. He simply listened to her ragged breathing, watched her fingers crumple the torn scraps of paper. After a long pause, Daniel gently placed his hand on Charlotte's shoulder and whispered, "You know, to save an entire orchard, sometimes you have to dig out the roots, even if it hurts and you'll mourn. You're on the right path, Charlotte. Only by seeing and feeling each person's pain firsthand can you truly summon the courage to change things, not with orders but with your heart." Charlotte trembled, her eyes red as tears fell for the first time since she began this journey. These weren't tears of a defeated CEO, but of a woman facing the truths she had once unconsciously ignored. "Do you think I can do this?" she asked, voice trembling. "No one but you can," Daniel replied, "because you know what it's like to feel pain and shame. You won't repeat the mistakes of those Lindas and Brians." Charlotte rested her head on her husband's shoulder. In that moment, her vulnerability was not a collapse, but the birth of a new strength. She knew she had to keep going, that discovering the problems wasn't enough. She had to act, even if the path ahead would provoke opposition, even if she risked losing the trust of her closest management team. That night, as the city outside finally quieted, Charlotte lay awake staring at the ceiling, promising herself, tomorrow, Charlie would return to Bright Vision, not just to observe, but to ignite a silent rebellion, to tear away the false facade, so that every good person would no longer have to feel alone in this house they helped build. And if she had to pay the price for that, she was ready, because sometimes it only takes one person willing to stand up to save an entire organization from sliding down the slope of apathy and injustice. Monday morning, there was an unusual buzz in the air at Bright Vision. Across every department, employees were talking excitedly about the urgent email. 9 a.m. sharp. Mandatory attendance for all staff in the main auditorium. Unexcused absences will result in disciplinary action. Nobody knew what was going on, except for the two most frightened faces, Linda Parker and Brian Mitchell. They were used to celebratory performance reviews and triumphant award ceremonies, but had never seen the powerful CEO summon the entire company with such silent, icy authority. At 9 a.m., Bright Vision's auditorium was packed, from logistics staff to senior management, everyone anxious and whispering. On stage, Charlotte appeared. Not in a power suit or heavy makeup, but in plain clothes, her hair cut short, her expression more solemn than ever. For the first time in Bright Vision's history, the female CEO was not standing as the boss, but as a mother, a teammate, and a witness to the pain of her people. Charlotte began with a long, deliberate silence. She scanned the auditorium with steadfast, decisive eyes, as if trying to reach every nervous gaze. I know you're expecting flowery words about our accomplishments, about growth in the business quarter, about the many awards we've won, but today we need to talk about the truth, the raw, painful truth behind the numbers I once proudly announced. Her voice rang out clearly and powerfully. Jittery hands stilled. The hush continued as Charlotte continued in a lower register. For the past month, I haven't attended leadership meetings, haven't gone to any big events, and haven't signed a single new contract. Instead, I lived here, in the role of someone you almost never notice, Charlie Baker, the company's newest janitor. The entire auditorium rocked. Some people laughed skeptically. A few managers started, suddenly recognizing the gestures and eyes of Charlie Baker from recent days. Charlotte raised her name badge high, and a camera zoomed in on the large screen. Charlie Baker, janitorial staff. Yes, that's me. I've been mopping floors, taking out trash, cleaning restrooms, washing the cafeteria, and spending hours in the walk-in freezer. I've heard everything, kind words and cruel ones. And today, I'm going to recount exactly what I witnessed, without hiding anything, without holding back. She looked toward the front row, where Henry Walker, Angela Brown, and Terrence Carter sat quietly, those people who had been ignored throughout the company's growth. Henry Walker, please stand. Henry stood up awkwardly, hundreds of curious eyes on him. Henry, your kindness, how you help everyone from interns to security guards, how you know every employee's name, how you never hesitate to bend over and pick up a fallen pen for a new janitor. Those are the last good things left at Bright Vision. Without people like you, we'd have been in darkness long ago. Many people around them were surprised, some with tears in their eyes. Henry blushed and bowed his head in embarrassment. Charlotte turned her gaze to the next seat. Angela Brown, please stand. Angela rose, trembling, her eyes darkened by many sleepless nights. I've watched you work until midnight out of responsibility. Heard you comfort your child over the phone while your friends partied. Your dedication and sacrifice deserve to be recognized far more than any party or team-building event that some people call the standard for promotion. Angela began to cry. Those who had once looked down on her and judged her exchanged awkward glances. And Terrence Carter, are you here? From the back of the auditorium, the tall African-American man rose quietly. You cried in that corner of the server room when you learned you were about to lose your home, when the company handed you only a stack of financial advice pamphlets. I want all of Bright Vision to remember, our indifference drove a good person like you to despair. The auditorium was stunned. Many faces dropped in shame, and some colleagues choked back their own tears. Charlotte paused, her eyes fixed on the management table. Her voice turned icy. But it's not only the silent ones who make Bright Vision. Those I trusted most are the ones steering this company off course. Linda Parker, please join me on stage. Linda stiffened, her face drained of color, and walked up to the stage with heavy steps. Charlotte looked Linda square in the eyes, There was no longer anger, only the pain of someone who had lost a beloved teammate. "Linda, do you remember the janitor you once shouted at in the main lobby? Do you recall saying, 'If you can't do it right, I'll find someone else'? We don't have time to fix your mistakes. Nobody here cares about people like you. I was that janitor, Linda." The auditorium fell silent. Charlotte carried on, her voice trembling but resolute. "You were the person I believed to be the ideal model of a modern female leader who preached fairness and diversity. Yet I witnessed you coldly decide to eliminate Raj Patel just because his English wasn't perfect. I heard you mock Donna Matthews for her age. I heard you judge employees solely on their outward appearance while ignoring their quiet sacrifices." Linda fought back tears, unable to lift her head. "I'm not only talking about you, I'm talking about all of us. If we don't change ourselves, none of us deserve to speak of success, of company culture, or the noble values we claim to uphold." In the tense silence, Charlotte concluded, "The truth has been laid bare. I admit my own failure for letting everyone endure this for so long. But starting today, Bright Vision will no longer be a place where kindness is crushed, where quiet contributors are cast aside." The auditorium remained deathly quiet, shocked, ashamed, hopeful, and fearful of the sweeping change that was about to roll in like a powerful wave. The air in the auditorium felt suffocatingly tense. After calling Linda Parker up onto the stage and repeating the harsh words and indifferent actions Linda had directed at Charlie, Charlotte paused, her gaze drilling into every line of Linda's face. The entire audience seemed frozen. Nobody dared move. Charlotte's question rang out, each word clear and ice-cold. "Linda, do you remember exactly what you said to me, Charlie, just because the mop bucket was dirty?" Linda trembled, her lips pressed into a thin line, her face drained of color. She gripped the edge of her blouse and looked at the floor, desperately avoiding the harsh truth that had just been exposed before hundreds of employees. There was a long, loaded silence. Sometimes the cruelest truths lie in the absence of any defense. Charlotte didn't let Linda linger in that silence for long. Her voice rang out, cutting and relentless. "But everyone, look straight at me. The fault isn't just Linda's or Brian's or any one individual's. It's mine too, Charlotte Benson, who placed blind faith in those rosy performance reports, who got so caught up chasing success that I abandoned those quiet voices, those hidden pains. I let a culture of exclusion, favoritism, and empty formalities quietly take over Bright Vision without even realizing it." She lifted her eyes toward the front row of the management team. Mark, the one who'd sneered at veteran employees. Laura, the manager who coldly rejected Angela for lacking team spirit. Brian, the one who ignored Henry's security warnings just to meet a deadline. Under the bright stage lights, their faces turned stiff. Many looked down. Some secretly wiped away tears. Others clenched their fists on the table. Charlotte dropped her voice, honest and heavy with regret. Maybe each of us once believed we were doing the right thing, that insisting on fast results was essential, that choosing people who fit the image was what the market demanded, that eliminating anyone with a different voice preserved the brand. But what price did we pay? We lost the trust of our most dedicated people. We branded Henry as someone who was just showboating, Angela as not a team player, Terrence as a personal problem, and Donna and Raj as useless relics of the past. And Linda, someone who once inspired so many young women and stood by my side during the toughest times, became the symbol of a cold, emotionless leadership style. Linda tried to lift her head, but tears fell silently down her cheeks. Her sobs weren't born of wounded pride, but of the raw pain of facing herself in front of everyone. Charlotte stepped forward and placed a hand on Linda's shoulder, a gesture firm yet filled with sorrow. "I didn't call you up here to humiliate you. I called you and myself up here so everyone could understand. If we don't change ourselves, if we don't honestly own up to our mistakes, we will drag Bright Vision down an irretrievable path." Several employees in the audience began to cry. Those who had once lived in the shadows were now being named and brought into the light, and the injustices they'd suffered were finally given their proper names. In the back corner, Henry clenched his fists. Angela bowed her head as tears streamed down her face. Terence looked around, hardly believing what he was hearing, his tear-filled eyes glimmering with hope. The air was thick, tense as a drawn bowstring. Everyone realized this moment was a turning point, the rare chance for a company of thousands to truly self-examine. The painful truth had been exposed, and the glittering veneer of leadership was stripped away, revealing real people, vulnerable, fallible, but capable of change if only they dared to face the truth and apologize. Charlotte concluded with unwavering resolve, "From today on, there will be no more invisible walls between us. No one will be sidelined simply because they don't fit a shallow standard. I promise you this. We will start a genuine cultural revolution, beginning with owning our mistakes, with every small action, with every person brave enough to speak the truth and stand up for what's right." The auditorium fell into a profound stillness. In the new light of these revelations, everyone understood. The era of blindly chasing numbers was over. For the first time in many years at Bright Vision, pain was no longer something to hide. It was the beginning of a genuine promise to change. The heavy silence after Charlotte's sincere admission of fault and honest dialogue didn't last long. Once emotions settled, and eyes that had once avoided contact now dared to look up, Charlotte moved into the defining moment, where a CEO no longer manages through edicts or reports, but through the courage to redraw the entire map of power and values within the company. She took a deep breath, then spoke with calm but commanding authority. "It's time for Bright Vision to change from the ground up, not with empty slogans but through concrete actions, unyielding action against injustice and favoritism." On the large screen behind her, bullet points began to appear, each a commitment, a revolution never before attempted in the company's history. 1. Anonymous reporting system. A shield for truth-tellers. Charlotte announced, "Effective immediately, we are launching an anonymous reporting system, where anyone can submit complaints about unfair treatment, discrimination, bullying, or any ethical violations without fear of retaliation. Our legal department, together with an independent HR counsel, will oversee this system and guarantee complete confidentiality for anyone who comes forward. No one, regardless of position, gets to hide from the truth." Tears glistened on many faces, whispered conversations breaking out. For the first time, invisible voices like Donna's, Raj's, and Terrence's felt that their words would carry real weight, that someone would protect them. 2. Overhaul of recognition and benefits, valuing the dedicated, preventing abandonment. Charlotte locked eyes with the seat where Terrence was sitting and spoke plainly. No one should ever face despair because of a broken benefit system. We will implement a new evaluation framework. All long-serving, dedicated employees, regardless of role, will receive real support for their finances, health, and well-being. An emergency assistance program for anyone experiencing a personal crisis will be established immediately, so that Terrence Carter's tragedy can never happen again. Sporadic applause rippled through the auditorium, growing stronger. an affirmation that no one would be left alone anymore. 3. Promotion. Transparency, eliminating insiders and brand fit bias. The screen shifted to a new heading. From now on, all decisions about promotions, transfers, and appointments will be based solely on genuine ability, performance, contributions, and collective feedback. Completely transparent, with no more insider favoritism, brand fit considerations, or personal connections. An independent promotion council will oversee every step and every decision. Among the crowd, faces that had once been excluded from promotion lists simply because they didn't fit the leadership image suddenly lit up with hope. Angela looked at Charlotte, her lips trembling as she realized she might actually have another chance. 4. Leadership training. Putting people above metrics. Charlotte paused, then turned to Linda, her gaze stern yet compassionate. All leaders at every level will undergo intensive training in professional ethics, active listening, empathy, inclusivity, and building a diverse environment that fights discrimination. Anyone who has committed serious violations will be reassigned to positions with less authority, where they must relearn the art of human-centered leadership. Linda was removed from her role as Chief Operating Officer and reassigned to oversee a charitable project, where she would see every day the people who had been excluded, judged, and who had been just like Charlie in the past. Charlotte looked at Linda for a long moment, then spoke softly but clearly for the entire auditorium. Forgiveness can begin only when we dare to change. I hope you return as the Linda I once believed in. 5. Coffee with the CEO. Initiative, weekly, real conversations with real people. Starting this week, I will host Coffee with the CEO, weekly meetings with representatives from each department to hear their small stories, their struggles, their pain, and their pride, things no report can ever capture. I want to know what bright vision truly is in your eyes, not only when we succeed, but also when we fail and feel hurt. The auditorium fell quiet for an instant, then erupted into prolonged applause. It wasn't just relief or joy, it was the feeling of finally being seen, of finally being heard, and of being promised a different tomorrow, one where human value is not an empty slogan. Charlotte stepped off the stage and walked past row after row of seats, pausing long beside Henry, Angela, Terrence, Donna, and Raj, those who had once been sidelined and invisible, but were now beacons of light. I can't do this alone, Charlotte said softly. Change must begin with all of us. That day, for the first time in many years, Bright Vision truly began to transform from its roots, not through performance reports or statistics, but through people brave enough to admit their mistakes, to offer forgiveness, to speak the truth, and to act on what's right. Charlotte's reform commitments didn't remain mere words on paper or empty slogans. They quickly turned into concrete actions that changed the atmosphere throughout Bright Vision. In the days following that seismic shift, the company felt awakened. Every floor, every department was filled with a new energy, chaotic with excitement, curiosity, and some cautiousness. But everyone knew that a new era had begun. Angela Brown, the dedicated black accountant who had sacrificed quietly for years, was officially promoted to head of the accounting department. On the day she received her appointment, the finance office erupted in genuine applause from her colleagues. Not the kind of perfunctory congratulations, but real recognition for someone who kept the fire burning without showmanship. For the first time, Angela took the large meeting podium and shared her experience discovering errors, balancing work with raising her young son. Stories that moved many to tears and inspired hope for true fairness. Henry Walker, the compassionate IT engineer, was appointed Corporate Culture Ambassador. No longer seen as an outsider merely for being kind, Henry now leads internal initiatives. From soft skills workshops to volunteer groups to new employee support activities. On the company bulletin board, his interview, "The Mission of Kindness," was shared, and everyone saw that kindness had become a genuine strength rather than a weakness as it had once been perceived. Terrence Carter, the maintenance worker who had cried over the threat of losing his home, received an emergency assistance package from the company. Bright Vision paid off his outstanding medical bills, helped him restructure his mortgage loan, and added him to the newly created welfare fund designed to prevent crises for all employees. For the first time in years, Terrence smiled brightly as he talked about a family dinner, no longer haunted by the fear of losing our home. It wasn't just those who'd been sidelined who were allowed to shine again. Raj Patel and Donna Matthews, two long-serving employees once mocked and excluded from projects for Raj's accent and Donna's age, were invited back to the flagship Artificial Intelligence and Senior Citizen Technology Initiative. Their experience, dedication, and diverse perspectives became core assets from which the younger team learned. In Monday morning meetings, Raj was now asked to give the first input, and Donna was held up as a model of perseverance and innovation. This revival wasn't only reflected in individual appointments, but also in the daily operations of Bright Vision. Small team meetings, which had previously served only as stages for young leaders to show off, became lively, democratic, and creative. For example, May, a young engineer who had been repeatedly ignored, was invited to present her proposal for disability support features in the new product to the entire leadership team. Charlotte, sitting in the front row, listened attentively to every idea and kept asking follow-up questions to help May confidently develop her project. Word quickly spread. May not only presented brilliantly, but was also chosen to lead the project implementation, working alongside Raj and Donna, a three-generation, three-colored tapestry of experience, all being respected, which led to the product being honored at a regional technology forum. The transformation was most vividly embodied by Linda Parker, once the formidable Ice Queen of operations, now one of the most active participants in the company's rebuilding efforts. After being removed from her executive role, Linda didn't leave Bright Vision. Instead, she volunteered for charity projects and took charge of professional ethics and listening skills training for new managers. Many young employees expressed surprise and admiration as they witnessed Linda openly admit her mistakes in front of a class and recount her journey from emotionless power to empathetic leadership. Her honesty and dedication to change became a new symbol of the capacity for learning and redemption. In addition, the Coffee with the CEO sessions, where Charlotte regularly selected 10 employees from all departments each week for unscripted conversations, sparked a new wave of openness. People felt free to speak truthfully and offer honest feedback without fear of judgment or retaliation. Charlotte personally took notes on every concern, followed up on each detail, and then shared implementation results so that employees truly felt heard. Under the giant wall mural that now read, "Respect, Listen, Innovate," Bright Vision gradually reclaimed the soul it had once lost. The work environment became open, multiple generations, ethnic backgrounds, and personalities integrated seamlessly, and employees who had once been belittled now became the driving inspiration for the entire workforce. Most importantly, genuine smiles reappeared on the faces of people who had long bowed their heads in resignation. Words of encouragement, empathetic sharing, firm handshakes, grateful and trusting looks, all of these became the foundation for Bright Vision's new era, where corporate culture was no longer a decorative plaque, but a living reality that revived in each and every person, day by day. The lobby of Bright Vision buzzed with a warm, lively energy on that Monday morning. The hurried footsteps of young engineers, the cheerful laughter of maintenance crews, the trusting nods from security guards as they opened the gates, all of it blended into a vibrant symphony of a team that had weathered a storm and was now flourishing from the roots up. Charlotte Benson stood quietly amidst the flow of people, no longer the distant power broker CEO, but a true teammate, a leader who listens, understands, and willingly bends down to value each small, everyday story. On the wall opposite the reception desk, Bright Vision's core values, respect, listen, innovate, which had once been inert words on a poster, now felt alive and meaningful. Below those words, new photos glowed. Angela and her son cutting the ribbon at the grand opening of Bright Vision's employee support office. Henry presenting flowers to the group of interns during their welcome event. Donna and Raj honored at a major tech conference. Linda leading an ethics training session for young managers. Gone were images of solitary leaders standing on lofty pedestals. In their place were moments of genuine togetherness, mutual appreciation, and daily encouragement. During one of her coffee with the CEO sessions that weekend, Charlotte chose a low seat and deliberately handed the microphone to employees who had never spoken up before. She listened to the stories of maintenance staff, technicians, administrators, security guards, accountants, everyone who had once been shadows, now confidently presenting ideas or sharing concerns. When the discussion ended, Charlotte bowed her head in thanks to each person, not as a perfunctory gesture, but with real gratitude, warm eyes, and a smile that no longer hid the fatigue of the past months. In a private moment, Daniel, her husband, who had wiped her tears and quietly encouraged her when she felt on the brink of despair, came to her side. He smiled gently, his eyes a mixture of pride and deep affection. "This is the wife I know, the leader of real people, not some untouchable power broker on high." Charlotte squeezed her husband's hand, her heart filled with a peace and fulfillment that she, as CEO, had never experienced before. She realized that real power doesn't reside in an imposing chair, but in the ability to foster an environment where everyone feels valued, where success isn't measured solely by sales figures, but by the growth, happiness, and gratitude of each team member. In the days that followed, Bright Vision continued to thrive, not just because of new contracts, but because every individual there had become a cultural ambassador of kindness. Multi-generational, multicultural, multi-personality teams collaborated to create new products that earned praise from the broader community. Every meeting, training session, and internal event paused to acknowledge even the smallest contributions, from the security guard who politely reminded a visitor to keep order, to the volunteer engineer who guided visiting students through the factory. That spirit spilled beyond the company's walls, becoming a model for change throughout the tech industry. And in Charlotte's heart, for the first time in many years, there was no more silent void, no more sleepless nights spent agonizing over what is the true meaning of success. She knew that she, and her entire team, had reached heights far beyond any previous peak because they had dared to start anew with gratitude and compassion. Even if tomorrow brought new challenges, Charlotte felt ready, because she understood that true leadership is service, building trust and inspiring every ordinary person to become extraordinary within the Bright Vision family. Thus, the journey from power to empathy, from the darkness of isolation to the light of human connection, had come full circle, and at the same time had opened a new era, an era of humane leadership, where the greatest success is walking forward together, growing together, and leaving enduring value for the future. The story of Charlotte Benson and Bright Vision is a powerful testament that true leadership isn't about standing atop a throne of power, but having the courage to bend down, truly listen, empathize, and serve the smallest voices in the organization. Sometimes the greatest changes begin with the simplest acts, a heartfelt thank you, a single act of kindness, or the bravery to admit a mistake and start over. What do you think of Charlotte's journey? If it were you, would you dare to step into someone else's shoes to see your own organization with fresh eyes? Share your perspective or experience in the comments below. If this story inspires you, don't forget to hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next heartfelt, real, and profound story.